Oh, yeah. Bless and love, my lords. Welcome to another live interview by Red Lion with our co host, of course, Dudley, and our esteemed guest, Mr. Hemba. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Hey guys, what's up?
Yeah, good, thank you. How about you guys?
All good, all good. I have been wanting to chat with you for a very, very long time. If you remember, we had we were talking probably like 6 months ago. I was talking to you. Let's make some kind of like documentary deep dive interview, and we agreed. And then you traveled, and we kind of lost track. So very, very happy to circle back and connect and have that chat at the end.
Yeah, I remember I was walking through Manhattan because it was during NFT NYC, and we were chatting about this, and I feel really bad because I initially said yes, and we had a conversation, and I know you guys started preparing, and then I turned around and said no, just because it didn't feel right at the time. But I'm glad I can be here today.
Yes, thank you for doing that. And it adds a little bit to the lore. So let's start with basically your punk story, as we always start. So you have one of the most unique stories out there to tell.
Yeah, so it was by pure luck that in 2017 I came to stumble upon CryptoPunks. How I did it, it was a Mashable article that was released, I think, on the 16th, which was about a week after the actual launch of Punks. I see this article, and it was written in such a compelling way that I saw it and I thought to myself, well, these must all be gone. There must be none left. Sure enough, I look at the website and there was still like 6,000 available. So I continue reading through this site and trying to figure out how do I claim them and what does it all mean. Each sort of paragraph I read of this article was like a crescendo of interest, and I sort of read through the steps on the website to how you can go and claim them. There used to be a wallet tool released by, I think, the Ethereum Foundation called GIST, which is like a really heavy GUI or command line interface client. And so I tried to download that and get that to work. That didn't really, because I think I needed to download like the whole blockchain. Speaking to actually another claimant, they did actually download the whole blockchain, and that delayed them. So I looked at other options, and the other option was my Ether wallet and using their command interaction function. So of course, MetaMask did exist back then, but we didn't have what we might today call Web3 in the sense of just Wallet Connect. So anyway, there I am trying to figure out the transactions and knowing that I wanted to get one, several, as many as possible. So yeah, it's simply I at first I'm sort of curating the ones I want, one at a time. Being quite deliberate about it.
Did you study the rarities, or you thought, oh, this one looks rare, I'm getting it?
Yeah, it was so overwhelming at first. So the way that these,
Because 1 second, let's give some context. It was a giant image, and you had to manually scroll, right, and zoom in, zoom out.
yeah, it's correct. It was all 10,000 images right there, manually scroll in and out, and I think there was an individual page per punk. But of course, if you're only just seeing this, you're so overwhelmed, and even though there was an individual page for each punk, there wasn't actually, to my memory, a numerical listing of the rarity. It just said the trait. It didn't actually say how many total traits there were. So unless you were smart and went to the GitHub like a couple of people, notably Moxley or Straybits, you wouldn't actually know by a glance what's rare and what's not. So anyway, there I was. I was sort of decently late in a sense. It's funny to say, but I was late in the sense that a lot of the rarer ones had already gone. Um, and so there I was, curating at first and then thinking to myself, well, this isn't fast enough. So I started doing sequentially, number by number, 2210, until I hit a failed transaction. And then I'd skip to a separate line and repeat again. Now, I wish somebody would go back and have a really detailed look, but to me, it felt like it was 18 hours straight of doing this, in between sort of pacing around the room like I'm doing now in this sort of excitement. But by the end of that, I'd claimed about 1,050 of these punks across a couple of different wallets. Um, and as soon as, after that time, I ended up collating them all into the one wallet just because I wanted to be that number one address. Because I was sort of racing a couple of the other addresses. Wilcox, we spoke recently, and he said that when he saw it, he immediately knew he wanted to claim as many as possible, sort of same as me.
Oh wow! And 1,050 punks was the absolute top that you owned, or you got more after that?
Yeah, so I got 1,050 and sort of thought to myself, okay, great, cool. I was scrolling through the punks, figuring out what I got, and was pretty excited. Uh, but there were some sort of notable absences. And there were some interesting ones that were listed up for sale on the website. And so I thought to myself, okay, $5, $10. I ended up actually buying, to my memory, one or two or three more. Um, and then in the course of buying them, I hit the withdraw button. So there's several functions within the CryptoPunks contract. One of them is withdraw, and it says receive all the money owed to you by the contract. And so that was sort of a really compelling thing of like, okay, well, I've already hit about 1,500 transaction in the past day. I'm a little bit sleepy, a little bit curious, obviously. So I hit this withdraw button and check Etherscan, and magically I've got money in my account. I'm trying to reconcile where this money's from. I thought it was like this fountain I just tapped into. Sure enough, it was the exact money that I had used to purchase the prior punk or punks. So then I replicated it. Thought, okay, maybe there's an issue with the contract. Sure enough, again, withdraw, receive the funds. Now I know, okay, there's something wrong. So I start, okay, let's see how many of these we can get, and back and forth, all the way up the ask book. We now know the total number of affected transactions was about 100, and I think I was about 82 of those, going all the way up to the book until I think 250 or 300 ETH for a punk within the first hours after everything had been claimed. And so there I was with approximately 1,130 punks, and obviously people realizing, oh, there's something terribly wrong with the contract. The tubes have been tied. Okay, so there I am with 1,130, and I've moved them all into the one wallet. I'm thinking, okay, that was cool. That was a bit of fun. Obviously, thinking these are pretty whiz bang. You sort of do the maths in your head. You're like, okay, these could be worth something, and even if they're only worth a few bucks each, I wasn't really doing anything interesting otherwise, sitting at home. So, time well spent. Super exciting. I'd never seen something like this before, despite having been around the crypto space for a while prior and been red pilled on Ethereum. There weren't really any interesting things to do with the Ethereum. Contrast that with Bitcoin, that was a mode of exchange back then, and that was really the only thing people wanted to trade.
Mm-hmm. And how was your journey with punks, sort of like after claiming them? Did you at the time think these will be worth a lot of money one day, or you thought they will not be worth much more anytime soon? And did you end up selling them?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could sort of quantify what I thought they might be worth. I certainly thought they were valuable, and certainly over the subsequent months and years, despite crypto having topped, that punks were released right around the ICO craze time. Um, Despite the market topping and just being down only for years and barely any volume, there always was this belief that these are valuable, and I always was sort of shilling them to others in the sense that for a long while, my name online in a trading group I was in was like own CryptoPunks, sometimes buy CryptoPunks, or I'd cycle between all the different punks that I owned as a PFP. And back then punks weren't what they are today, so everyone thought I was a bit of a freak. Of course, even if you're in NFTs in general, you weren't that interested in punks because they weren't the hot new thing. They didn't have any volume. It was seen as a thing that was like one and done. Okay, cool. We like it. It's one of the earlier forms, but it's not new, innovative, exciting. Um, but yeah, since claiming, ever since I claimed, I was gradually selling on market. I think Blur likes to say the meme of like Hemba's always dumping or something, because I was the guy with asks on market consistently. I was the market maker. Sometimes I'd buy, sometimes I'd sell, um, and even in the quietest period, I might get one sale a week, one sale every 2 weeks. And at the bottom there, I was selling stuff for say 10, $15 each. In 2017, after June, volume peaked and then was just down only. A few spikes along the way as people came in and sort of churned through them, but generally it was just down only in terms of volume.
You mentioned the chatter, Hemba always dumping. Um, there, you have been very active. You were very active at the Punks Discord, especially on the early days. And yeah, as you said, you were the market maker, but you have always been a controversial figure in there. Um, how do you how would you say you approached your image back then and what you did versus now?
I don't think it's completely accurate to say I was always controversial, but certainly I was unafraid of being a troll at times. But I mean, my sort of called a story arc has been quite an arc in the sense that I've gone through various different stages within crypto, within call it the punks chat to now. So how would I approach? How did I approach my personality? You said, um, just as I did, I guess. There wasn't really any specific stratagem to it, but certainly I could say that I was different then to what I am now, just like I was different yesterday to what I am today.
Mm-hmm. So how would you say you have matured through that process, and what has been like the main ups and downs that have created who you are today?
It's a good question. Um, I mean, I'm quite well known for CryptoPunks, but uh, really, that's not the most significant part of what I've spent my time on over the past many years in crypto. Um, I have really sort of done it all, other than any development stuff. Unfortunately, I'm not a developer, despite probably being on the spectrum that a developer might be on. Um, so I've done a lot of stuff. I've been involved in a bunch of other NFT projects. I've also traded consistently for a number of years. invested in various different things. I wasn't early enough into DeFi. I wasn't super early, but I was early enough. Of course, I've just sort of been plodding around in lots of places within crypto, and generally, I guess, in markets and online. So, what has been the element that's matured me, or what has matured me most? I think time and experience, and I've also traveled quite a lot. I've lived abroad in lots of places. I've been in plenty of uncomfortable situations. So I think it's time and a natural progression matures you. Um, it's really just experience, isn't it? When you're a bit younger, you you might have a talent, you might have an idea of your potential, but given you're just a bit experienced, inexperienced, naive, uh, sometimes it can be a bit of all gas, no brakes, not enough nuance. Um, it's just a general inexperience.
Yeah, I mean, we all mature through life and we all go through a lot. Everybody's journey is quite different, but we can all say with confidence, if I met my 15-year-old self, I probably would smack him in the face a couple of times, you know? So who we are today or before 10 or 4 or 5 years is not who we are today, and experiences and living is what shapes us. I agree with that. How many punks do you currently own?
I've got about 950, 930 V1s. I bought a CryptoPunk, a V2, several months ago. I'm considering whether I buy another one because I do know there's plenty of good stuff coming and there's plenty of catalysts for the collection. But yeah, I've still got quite a few.
So from 1050 to one right now, and a bunch of 930, you said, V1s. Um, which prices did you sell your punks at? How long has it been that you sold the bulk of your punk holdings?
You're asking when I sold the punks? So,
When and for how much?
okay. So, I think it was sometime around middle 2020 or early 2020. And I don't have exact numbers, but I would have had about 350 because I was having a conversation. Was it 2020? Somewhere around there, because I was having a conversation with a friend about setting up a DAO. We were looking to model it off of like whale sharks thing, except we actually wanted to, have the token reflecting the assets rather than just sort of hopes and dreams. So we were looking at doing that with some autoglyphs that I had, some cash, as well as punks. So that's sort of that sticks in my mind. About 2020, I had about 350, 400, let's say. And so that means those prior years, I'd actually sold off perhaps half or more than half of my collection. And that would have been at an average that's quite low when you look back at it now. That would have been at, say, half an ETH. Um, then towards the end of 2020, this was when DeFi was sort of really heating up. And so we also saw Rarible Marketplace come to be. And they were offering volume incentives back then for trading. So of course, everyone was sort of wash trading, trying to get those incentives. And that led to a huge boost in the value of CryptoPunks. People were wrapping these CryptoPunks, listing them on Rarible, then either buying themselves or others would be buying based on the momentum because price was just sort of up only. And so I took this opportunity to sell the remainder of the punks that I had. And I'm not quite sure how many it was, but it was definitely a few. I took that opportunity to sell them thinking, okay, cool. This is obviously an illusion of buy pressure. So let me take this liquidity, go throw this extra cash into DeFi, 10x that real quick, come back to CryptoPunks, wait until they've dropped back down, buy all of the punks. Now,
No, that never happens. We all know that. Once you sell, nobody buys back in. Very rarely. I mean, when trading, you sell something, you never go back in.
yeah, so that was what I was doing.
Mm.
And of course, half of that formula we were able to complete. I was able to actually have some success in DeFi with that extra cash. However, punks dropped a little bit. They dropped down to, I think, 2 ETH, 2.5. My number I was looking for was about 1.5, 1.5. They didn't drop far enough. And then I sort of got a bit distracted over in what I was doing elsewhere. Now, this also coincided with the time when Ethereum jumped from about $300 to $1,100 between end of November and January, February. And so, of course, my bread and butter is trading. That's from OTC way back then to derivatives on market stuff ever since. That's my bread and butter. So I was occupied there. But punks didn't get to the number I wanted to. So I was doing quite well with that money I'd gotten liquid. But then punks started to run. And they ran to say 5, then 10, 15. And we see me bits come out and this and that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that sucks. But okay, I'm still okay because the market's way up and I'm doing okay over here. But then punks just kept running, right? And no matter how good you think you are, I don't think you can outperform 100x. So of course, punks spent the rest of that 2021 just running until say July, August, when they finally topped at about 450,000 floor. You might know.
Hello?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I lost you a little bit there at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I think we are back on. Yeah, okay. Yeah, man, that was a wild ride, and I remember back then with the Rarible. I'm happy that you mentioned that. That was wild times, wasn't it? I think I sold you so many punks that I bought another punks from you also. You were going crazy back then. You brought 300-400 punks to Rarible. I can't remember, but you were not only selling, you were buying also. I remember.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, obviously, the market was just sort of up only there for a bit, and there was insane volume. And it was obvious, the reason why everyone was there was to collect this free airdrop. But yeah, that was crazy time. In fact, I had a lot of friends, online friends that were actually organizing, pools of cash just to buy up a bunch, bid it up, etc., etc. Like it was pure, market wishy-washiness. So I thought, okay, let's take this opportunity because, as I'd known from the past several years, it's actually hard to catch a bid with punks. This is quite rare for this much volume. So I was obviously of the false impression that that money was sort of dead money, and I wanted to throw it over to the other side of my book to make it work. Of course, hindsight 2020, that was absolutely the wrong thinking. And it really, that was sort of the genesis, that early 2021, the late 2020, that was really the genesis of this NFT bull market or this NFT renaissance, in the sense that prior to that, the majority of the NFTs, the market was just junk, like really just junk. Of course, though, there was this amazing space in terms of art, and that was flourishing, and smart people were collecting back then. But really, there was never in anyone's wildest expectations the market would do what it did.
You have been forged in the punks chat and in the punks discord. You have spent countless of hours in there. What do punks mean for you?
Yeah, I think it's amazing the sort of serendipity that happened when they created CryptoPunks, and you listen to their interviews, and it's clear what their line of reasoning was in terms of what is crypto? Well, crypto is this idea of punk. It's this idea of being disruptive, forcing change, not asking permission, being different and being unafraid to be different. But it's this disruption and this change with the purpose of improving the world, improving the future. It's not just a protest for the sake of it. And so for me, CryptoPunks are representative of the ethos, the identity that is crypto. Now, of course, CryptoPunks have nothing to do with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was the genesis of this space we find ourselves in now. But CryptoPunks are representative of the ETH component of that, the Ethereum component of this sort of crypto culture we find ourselves in. So, it's been great to see, particularly those who really, really believed in CryptoPunks, that perhaps were claimants or people that bought early and had like absolute dogged conviction in it and just held, whether they were active in the chat regularly, active in the community regularly, or whether they were absent somewhere else. It's great to see those true sort of believers and passionate people succeed. And of course, through the holdership of CryptoPunks, you see real icons of the space. And it's not just the people who can afford $100,000 for a JPEG. Really, the people that came to own CryptoPunks, particularly 2017, 18, 19, 20, they are the who's who of crypto.
Did you expect that? Or was it something that caught you by surprise in 2021 when you realized or you saw how it's developing?
No, I mean, you always knew people were quite talented, particularly, the concentration of talented people way back in earlier crypto days is a lot better than what it is today. Frankly, the real core of crypto are the developers. And those sort of early participants in crypto, I think, came at it with a more hardcore, how do I phrase this? They had a more hardcore sense of what crypto is and their part within it. So certainly you knew from early on. However, it also was the case that earlier on in crypto, people were more anonymous. It was a bit more private. You didn't talk as much about your life. The ideals of crypto were cryptography. It was privacy, anonymity. So certainly you had a sense that you were around really talented people and you could see the things that they were creating and what they could do. But another key point to remember is that we might think of the chat as always being this very busy, vibrant place, but that's not actually the case. I think it wasn't actually until, say, 2019 that we saw more than 100 concurrent active online users in a Discord. So despite punks, existing during this bear market, it was really quite quiet. And maybe you wouldn't have seen a message for a week sometimes, or at least several days. There might be a sale that pops up and people come in and say, oh, wow, fantastic. But really, the things that we attribute to CryptoPunks now are almost retrospective in the sense that we now reference them as being this seminal work. We now reference them as representing this. Of course, at the time, you weren't to know. It's just like those who might have been buying an artwork by X copy during those early years when it was a couple of $100. You weren't to know how impactful that artist would be in terms of NFT art. You were just collecting it because you thought it looked cool. And of course, later down the track, consensus, we look back and we say, wow, this is important for these reasons.
Mm. Wow. You have been. I remember. I didn't join. I didn't join so early as you, but I remember Punk's chat, how it was, and what you mentioned earlier. And yeah, there was definitely a high concentration of super intelligent and skilled people in there, and even to me when I joined, it wasn't apparent what was going to happen, and I remember it back then, and I, we tend to say, "Oh man, people were in it and had so many punks and all of that," but it wasn't as apparent. Everybody believed that punks would be worth more one day, and we didn't know it would be 6 months from that day. But yeah, there is also a tendency to romanticize the early days. Do you think in a more subjective way, is it better then or better now?
I mean, it's hard to answer, but you definitely, I think very few people can say with a serious face that things were better back then in terms of crypto. Um, sure, there's certain elements that you might look back on in early crypto days that you really appreciate. Something that is really romantic to me and memories I quite like is back when I was trading OTC with customers. And OTC is basically, if we're doing a face-to-face OTC trade, it's cash in exchange for bitcoins, whether I'm buying or I'm selling. What I loved back in the early days was that people were private. People didn't want to share their information. So I wouldn't ask somebody's name. I wouldn't ask any personal questions. We'd just have a conversation. We'd eat a nice meal. Maybe we talk about what's happening in crypto, or talk about the weather. But I really loved
Isn't
that sort of
that,
feeling.
sorry to interrupt, but isn't that also how internet developed at the beginning? We would go online and people would say, "Oh, don't put your real name and address there. Just sign in. Just use fake name and address." And right now, everybody uses their real name and the real data, and we
It's
saw
true.
that, yeah, like that kind of translated to Web3, where people wanted to be very anonymous in crypto, and we have seen a total 180 on that, and people are super public about their crypto and their name, and the people choose not to be, but of course we see more and more people choosing to be social through crypto rather than not.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely there's definitely been so many advancements and improvements for a participant in crypto. You can't say that it was better back then. Um, uh, there was less oversight back then. After the terrible few months and year we've had now, just imagine how bad it was back then. When I talk about the ICO craze of middle 2017, well, that was just a concentration of these ICO scams. There was plenty happening in the years prior to that. If you wanted to, you just copy paste, edit a couple of words of a white paper, put it up online, get a front end, back end done, uh, you know, put your token out there and raise yourself 8 figures. Over the subsequent years or even instantly, you just pull the money out and disappear and go recreate it. That was what people were doing. So, the space really was rampant with crookery. So it's certainly better today. One thing that's really changed the space for better and for worse is NFTs in general. Rather than people being tribalistic and community orientated around a coin or a project, they're that way to an NFT collection. But that is what helps them feel a part of the space. They can identify as being a part of that community.
Hmm. You have been into crypto since super early on, and you have been trading even before you started with punks. So you have been through a lot of bear markets and bull markets. What is sort of like a condensed, like zoom out perspective of yours that you gained through your exposure on these markets?
Um, okay, so each each market cycle you go through makes it easier. It also gives you that sort of zoom out ability. Um, it also means, I mean, if you can survive through multiple cycles, it means that you've found a way to either A, print cash, or B, minimize your risk, or C, print cash and minimize risk. Um, or at least know when you need to play defensive versus offensive. So, the scariest part for me of a cycle is when stuff is just going up only, because it's so hard to control your emotions. You just want to allocate in, you just want to risk more and more. It's so hard to know when you should be reducing risk and getting out and playing defensive. Um, but, generally, how you have to play this stuff is zoom out on a chart, try and form a high time frame opinion on where you think things might go, but also include caveats in the sense that, okay, well, if it goes to here, then my theory of it going one way is disproven. If it goes to here, then my theory is proven. Try and come up with a high time frame plan. It's also about being aware of the emotional cycle of a market, in the sense that the euphoria cannot last forever, nor can the despair. So if we translate that to the current market, well, it's obvious that we're in a state of despair, perhaps where we've got a bit of complacency creeping in, without thinking of anything else that could happen. Now is a better financial opportunity than what it was, or what it is, when everyone is crazy exuberant, when they're in Miami spending $50,000 on a table, when they're talking about buying boats and Lambos, when they've got their fists together in a circle showing their new watches. So it's about trying to see these moments and go, this can't last forever, or wow, that's kind of unrealistic, or specifically, how is it that this person's made so much money when they don't know what the hell they're doing? And then you think to yourself, okay, well, maybe everyone's making crazy money, and it's going to take a hair trigger for it to come crashing down.
Yeah, I agree. I agree a lot with a lot of the stuff you said, especially looking for the top signals, and it's also super funny. Hindsight being the perfect science, what would you say has been your biggest mistakes?
Well, I managed to sell CryptoPunks for, I think, a total of about 1,000 ETH, instead of perhaps a notional value at the top, which would have been, I think, 100x. No, sorry, more than 100x. In USD notional, it would have been, let's say, 500 million. I managed to mint about 72 autoglyphs, just by chance. And I sold most of those off for not a huge amount of money. of course, notional at the top. If you count the top tick, that would have been about $100 million. I think today it wouldn't be as much, but it'd still be a decent amount. Autoglyphs are pretty great though. It'd be about $20 million now, I think, maybe 25. Same thing with Axes. I managed to mint about $80,000 worth of Axes way back in 2018, including some of the rarer ones. But I sold out of that for I think a 2x or a 3x or something, instead of, I guess, being patient for a couple of years later for when Delphi got in and it went ballistic. So what's my biggest mistake? I think those three in terms of NFTs, but I've got plenty. I mean, given I've been quite an active participant in the market for a while, you're always going to have these stories. There was one in I think April of 2017 where I booked about 1.8 million in unrealized P&L in the space of like 12 hours in a coin. And I didn't take it. And of course, if you add 1.8 middle 2017, when you're talking about ETH being worth $250, well, you're laughing, right? So I ended up seeing that go way up and then basically coming back to my entry. So that's a big one in the scheme of things. But also, late 2015, early 2016, I had myself thousands of coins, thousands of Bitcoins. And you find different ways to lose them or trade your way down out of them. I was lucky enough to buy into some ETH quite early.
How did you get to have Bitcoin and so many assets? Were you rich before crypto?
No.
So how did you grind these amounts up, especially so early back then?
So this came from my OTC trading. So you start with a relatively insignificant amount, and you just manage to grind your way through that. And it really comes down to volume, and obviously it's compounded hugely by the commission that you're taking. Fortunately, or I guess unfortunately, if you're a client, the commission back then was insane. You're talking about 20-25% commissions on a trade. So I could go and do a $10,000 trade and take $2,500 for my efforts. Of course, if you're lucky, you could actually organize both sides of the trade in the same day. So my job was really being a matchmaker, and my sole goal was to make sure that I was getting as many matches, particularly in the right order, that I could. And so in a perfect day, you'd go and buy a whole bunch of Bitcoins and take 20% on one side, or 15% if you needed to. Then in the afternoon, you go and sell all those Bitcoins at 15%. And suddenly then, if your notional for that day is $100,000, you've done a pretty decent percentage on it.
Oh yeah, sign me up for that. Sounds good. What are your views in art, and what has been your relationship with art before crypto and after crypto?
So, I mean, that's another thing you could add to the list of things I regret. Always, when looking at sort of crypto art early on, always to me it was, wow, that's too expensive. I was one of these guys that was like, well, I could just, copy it, or, oh, it's never going to be as valuable as the thing in the gallery. But also, obviously, that came with a lot of ignorance. I wasn't ever a rich kid. My family wasn't ever rich. If you don't grow up around this stuff, how do you learn it? Particularly something as obscure as art. So, add that to the list of things I can regret in hindsight, was not buying some of this early art. But of course, if I was buying to taste, I might have just bought all of the crappier stuff that isn't worth anything. So
The lesson, however, is that crypto brought you to art, right?
it's correct. Yeah, it's correct. Um, and fortunately, I'm now in a situation where both for pleasure and for financial return, I can look at art as an investment. Um, so yeah, I mean, art's a really difficult thing to invest in unless you've got money. Certainly, there's art of all different value all along the spectrum, but you're not expecting to make a financial return from art you buy in a mall. Um, just like this boldness to go and buy of one back in 2018, 2019 for $5,000 on the internet using crypto is outrageous. Yet people still did, and credit to them.
Yeah, even in 2020.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it feels like we've been in the space for a while because we've all lost so much hair, gained so much weight, or we look so ugly now. But this space is really quite new in the scheme of things. And prior to 2020, the space was absolutely different to what it is today. Even 2020 itself is very different to what it is today. So, in terms of art, I mean, you can unequivocally say CryptoPunks are art, and there's very few collections that are unequivocally art in crypto. So, there's a clear distinction for me between stuff that now you might find on a super rare or one of ones or drawings or AI creations, etc., etc., and NFT collections. Sure, you can declare it art in a sense of somebody artistic created it, but there's very, very few NFT collections that I would consider to be art, or at least these high issue collections that use the sort of 10,000 model. Whereas CryptoPunks magically is able to sort of have this triple where it's art, it's collectible, it's the 10,000 series, and it's gone on to inspire everything after it.
Yeah, it is the blueprint for everything that came afterwards. You listed getting exposure to art as a regret, but I think it's a positive thing that through crypto and NFTs, you got educated about art and started appreciating something that possibly you never would otherwise. So through that monetary element was an attraction factor for you and for many many other people, and I think it's something beautiful. And going back, the CryptoPunks helped you, as me and a lot of people, mature in the market and as a person. It's also something that everybody can relate to, especially punks who have been there. What are your views on Yuga Labs?
I think Yuga got hugely lucky, in terms of when they released their collection. It was at a time when we'd never seen that happen. In the sense of, okay, we saw something happen big with hash masks. Sure, we'd seen something big happen with Me Bits, a few other collections. But really, uh, you know, uh, my memory might be incorrect, but this was around the time, or it led to a time where people were just like pot shotting into any old collection, thinking, okay, well, it's only $200. Let's see what happens. And so, Bored Apes were insanely lucky that through this magical, I guess, um, arrangement of different things in terms of timing, in terms of, I guess, the presentation, in terms of what happened with the holdership and the initial distribution, that it got picked up. And so, I was a bit absent to that conversation in the early days. I was sort of, call it, arm's distance to it. And I always kind of have been. But what I think happened with Bored Apes is it, insanely lucky in what happened. Obviously, everyone now credits Pranksy for having not only minted a bunch, but gotten rid of them pretty quickly. I remember with friends, we were sort of laughing, going, "Oh, the Pranksy special. He's managed to mint himself like $3 million. What suckers who bought?" Of course, it turns out it was the inverse.
So then Praxi pulled the Hemba on you.
Yeah, Pranksy pulled a Pranksy. So we saw what happened there, but gradually they build momentum, and eventually the whole market. You're riding on this wave of the market in general. Gradually, the message gets to Osiri, and at this point, it's just pure dumb luck what's happened in terms of this rise. The fact that it was a collection of apes versus a collection of giraffes or rats or I don't know, some different kind of primate, I think it's just up to chance. And Osiri came to be aware of it, and he helped add that sort of that star element in terms of all of the celebrities, all of the endorsements, and really when we started to see that massive celebrity entry into not only Bored Apes but NFTs in general, is when it started to hit the normies. And so, normies will buy what a celebrity tells them to buy, and that's what they did. So that was what really set the collection off. And of course, at the same time, Yuga's there and they capitalize on it by raising and become this now large company that they are. So for me, I think Yuga was exceptionally lucky in how they came up and that it was them and not, say, another collection. And now they're seen to be like a really major player in the space. They've obviously got a few different collections. Yeah, I mean, it sort of is what it is with Yuga.
And what about them buying the punks?
I think it was opportunistic. I know that they became aware that punks were for sale, or sorry, they saw what was happening in terms of Lava Labs floundering in response to some of the V1 stuff. Of course, V1s came to be known more prominently in early of this year. And the response from Lava Labs was a bit sort of tripping over themselves and obviously under pressure. Guy saw that and he got in contact with them. This was around the time of the Super Bowl or a little bit before. He got in contact with them to try and sort of lend a helping hand. During the course of that conversation, he came to be aware that there was a possibility to sell the collection, and that these guys sort of wanted out of it or didn't feel that they were right to continue on. This also happened to coincide with the time when Yuga was doing their most recent race. Or sorry, maybe it wasn't their most recent, perhaps it was, but a massive raise. I think this was at 4.5 or 5 billion. And so what happened is they actually increased the size of the raise they were doing to account for buying CryptoPunks and Meebits. This was cash and equity. So it was opportunistic, and Yuga Labs obviously in the short term were thinking to themselves, okay, let's just get as much IP as possible, roll up, keep blowing up our valuation. Why not? The reality is that CryptoPunks, the IP in the hands of Lava Labs might be worth notional $250 million, $100 billion. Sorry, 100 million. In the hands of Yuga, it's worth 5 times that because Yuga was on this hot streak. Yuga had the connections. Yuga was raising big money. So it makes a lot of sense for Yuga to buy it with other people's money, add it to their balance sheet, and then look to capitalize on their momentum. So it made a lot of sense for them. And in terms of the Lava Labs guys, well, it made a lot of sense for them too, with the idea that they take a massive payday, bigger than they've ever taken. And, you know, yeah, if there was an option
How
for
did
them,
you feel about it?
I think it was actually my initial response was, okay, this is good in the sense that Lava Labs would stop falling over themselves, and in terms of the community, it's better than being in the hands of Lava Labs, because obviously they've got absolute brilliance and they've done innovative stuff, but hugely incompetent when it comes to marketing and management, and that's not. I don't think that's unfair to say. Amazing visionary for the things that they've done, but their management isn't what they're good at, and they never sort of brought that into any of their projects. So it was a sort of mixed response. Good in the sense that, okay, now something is going to happen. Bad in the sense that, well, the whole community, or at least the vocal part of the community, was hoping that they would have put the IP and all of their remaining punks into a foundation, into a DAO. And they would have given stewardship or ownership of punks, at least officially, to the community. And this was something predicted based on something that slipped into a bit of code that said Punk Foundation. Of course, this came as a result of the significant pressure that was put on them and the community in late 2021, and I think rightfully so, saying, hey, we've spent $250,000 on this picture, but you haven't given us any IP and we can't commercialize it. And when kind people approach them looking to commercialize their stuff, for example, G Money, they get rejected, by UCA or UTA at the time. So it was a mixed thing. I know that a huge number of the community was really upset by it because there was this view, I think incorrectly, but partially correct, that they were being sold to their competitor. I think the correct sort of view is that, well, they were sold out in the sense that, it's like your parents giving you away when you didn't want to be given away. So I think that wasn't a good day for a lot of people. Other people sort of made the best out of it that they could and sort of focused on what could be the positives. But from Yuga's perspective, good deal. From Lava Labs' perspective, good deal. From the community's perspective, I don't think you'd chalk that up as a win.
Very, 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 very interesting. So you say, to summarize, they were at the right place at the right time, and they kept on capitalizing, and they caught the pulse really well. They found an opening, they got it, they bought it, but it hasn't been rosy since then, to put it lightly.
What do you mean hasn't been rosy?
I mean, as you said, some people got rejected, and there has been some friction, right? Still.
Yeah, I mean, ever since, say, end of 2021, or even I think prior to that, when people were sort of asking, hey, can I do something with my punk? Can I put it on some t-shirts and sell them, or put it on some mugs, or do things that are net good? Always my response to them was, yeah, go and do it. Go and do it. Make it well. Be proud of it. Make some money off it. Because if somebody tries to chase you up, then all of us can band together and tell them to F off. Like, I don't think it's the right idea to be saying, oh, no, it says we can't commercialize it. If you've spent $250,000 for a picture and you can't go and put that on a t-shirt and sell them for $20 each, because Big Daddy's going to come after you. That's ridiculous, and we as a community should stand up and fight that. So, sorry, I've lost my point there. Can you prompt me again what we're talking
Yeah,
about? I lost it.
about Yuga and having the right to put your property on your products and sell them, and
people being upset. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, from that perspective, it's good, but also, really, there's been almost nobody actually commercializing anything to do with any NFT, and B, a punk. Credit to people in the Bored Apes community. I've never really been a part of it, but it's a really strong community, and they're very supportive of each other. And there are people trying to create commercial opportunities using their punks. Using their apes. The punks community, we haven't really seen any of that. And one thing that I do think is very positive with Lava Labs having sold the collection is that finally we're seeing punk owners, punk community members step up and say, hey, well, if it's now clear that Lava Labs doesn't want to sort of do anything with this, and it's clear that Yuga Labs is going to be very, very softly with this, and also that, well, I don't think Yuga Labs represents me. People are going out and doing things themselves, and it's better late than never, in the sense that we should be encouraging more of this. We should be encouraging the community to organize itself and have that stewardship itself. People sometimes have this idea that Yuga is some all-powerful entity that controls the space. It's not true, because what is Yuga if not a collection of people with some funding and with a few collections, with a brand name? When you think about the holdership of CryptoPunks, the assets controlled, the protocols controlled, and the influence, well, I think it's much larger. So it's just the fact that CryptoPunks are not organized, and that's just as a natural result of them having been created several years ago, and really nothing actually having been centrally led or organized since then. But yeah, I'm certainly bullish on punks realizing their potential and starting to organize themselves. I think A, that's what Yuga would want to see. B, they have to take a very softly approach with the collection, because they're cognizant of their reputation. They're cognizant that they don't want to have a heavy hand on this. They don't want to be too linked to it, for fear of A, upsetting the Bored Apes, or B, upsetting the punk community. So I think it's up to punks in general to start creating initiatives on their own. And further, I'd say,
Hey, okay, we are back. Sorry about that. The Twitter rag, as usual. We will wrap it up with a couple of questions here. So, when we posted, we will be chatting with you. Immediately, we saw a reaction from PolyOX and some funks. What is the story there?
I don't think Paulie's a positive contributor to the space in terms of the way he carries himself and attacks other people. I think for a long time, myself and many others have given him a lot of rope. I've had conversations with several people recently around this. We've given him a lot of rope, benefit of the doubt, sort of explained away some different things, tried to see the lighter side of the coin, if that's a saying. He had a real opportunity there around the time of the lawsuit, RRBAYC stuff, to actually be a really interesting figure in terms of an IP conversation, in terms of that perspective of, anti-big guy, etc., etc. Could have really been an interesting angle. I'm not really big on the sort of RRBAYC stuff. However, from purely a sort of thought-provoking perspective, it's interesting. But it's been clear that the sort of toxicity and attacks and vexatious stuff has just gotten worse, more frequent. He started to have more run-ins with mods or community members from V1s, and eventually enough became enough. After a few different sort of mutings and bannings along the way, finally a decision was made of, okay, let's just ban him everywhere. We don't need this around V1 punks. We don't need this around the space in general. So I make absolutely no apologies for that decision, and I think it was the right decision. And I think people can have valid things that they're complaining about, or that they want to see improved, or that attention needs to be drawn to. But at a certain point, it crosses into the realm of harassment, and bullying, and just really awful stuff on a constant basis. And why should we and the people that perhaps we represent or that we give leadership to have to condone or endure that every single day? With the space being what it is now, people want to wake up, log into their computer, say GM, and have a good time and try and explore opportunities. They don't need all this bullshit along the way. And I think particularly, I said this before, particularly in light of the recent stuff, past few months and this year, we as the positive contributors to this space should be stamping out all this stuff, should be putting our foot down, and should be giving a good impression to some of those people on the fringes or newly entering. So my estimation is he's a little bit upset because somebody has responded in a way that he didn't like.
During our chat here, Binance suspended withdrawals after they saw 3 billion leaving their exchanges, and right now it looks like it's back up and working. I saw. It's from yesterday. That is it from yesterday.
What's that? So
yesterday, As I saw them, there was like a post from Binance. From some reason, they postponed USDC withdrawals, but they relaunch it again. So they were over 1 billion today. What I saw from a CZ's post today, but all is fine and Gucci again. I hope.
Okay.
I mean, they're sitting on 60 billion on their cold wallet, so I think they might be okay. It's just massive fat going on in the space,
well, I mean, so like there's a logical reason why they might have had an issue in terms of, it looks like they've just gone and converted all of their USDC to BUSDC, and so they're saying it was just this sort of liquidity thing in terms of banks and this and that. However, now is not the time to be trusting people you don't need to trust in the space. Where there's smoke, there's something no good. And the way that CZ's been acting recently, think about the reason why we had this initial problem with SPF and CZ. Think about the various US feds that are investigating Binance and that are wanting to go after CZ. And also remember that Binance existed or started and came up very, very quickly in a time when there was even less oversight than now. And you can bet the money you've got that Binance has done some unsavory stuff in the past. So sure, Binance should have crazy money. There should be no solvency issue. However, what happens if the feds really go after them? What happens if they try and sanction Binance? Why do you need the stress in your life of trusting these guys if time and time again this year, it's so many people that have been trusted have turned out to be frauds? So my advice to everyone would be, you don't need to have money on Binance unless you're an MM or unless you've got nowhere else to trade at scale. My recommendation would be move to BitMEX, to be honest, if you want to hedge. You can't really get big size in there. So the other options would be Didex. They've got decent liquidity. I'm a big fan of GMX. I've got a massive bag. I like that, although there's not many trading pairs. Bybit, I don't trust them. Kraken, supposedly they're a bit more transparent. Still don't trust them. Crypto.com, don't trust them. All of these audits that they're showing us aren't real audits. It's a joke. It's don't be fooled by that stuff. So, I wouldn't fall into the trap of being way too far on either side, either saying, hey, it's going to explode tomorrow, or saying, no, I trust CZ. He's happy-go-lucky. He's a good guy. It's somewhere in the middle. And from a pure risk standpoint, if you don't need to have money on there, then don't have it on there, I think.
Personally, I don't understand it, man. Since day one in crypto, we say, you should own your coin. And right now, there's just so many decentralized alternatives that are superior to the centralized options in many cases. Okay, in some cases not, but yeah, why would people store so much money in exchanges? I don't know. It boggles my mind. I really don't get it.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm sad to say a lot of friends of mine have lost a lot of money through FTX. And these are really smart people, really talented traders, really great investors. And they were absolutely of the belief that, well, how is it possible that FTX could be insolvent? How is it possible that any of this stuff is true? And so they continued to trade or hedge or whatever. I guess it's a bit of laziness, it's a bit of complacency that we found ourselves in, but it was also this fallacy that we all seem to have, both in crypto markets and traditional markets, that a black swan event is so rare. It couldn't happen to me. Or if it does happen, it's once every 10 years. But in reality, the events that we consider black swans actually happen really, really regularly. And so I guess it's a good reminder to everyone, but also it is kind of tough luck. And we absolutely haven't seen the last of all of the funds and big companies that are in financial trouble. And there's all kinds of wheeling and dealing in the background to either continue to perpetuate fraud or to try and just sort of keep everything hush-hush and avoid going into Chapter 11. But for me, what I've done is I've just pulled some risk out of the market. I've got money there that I'm happy to keep in there because I like this spot higher time frame. But I've pulled out a lot of other money because I don't want to have the headache of all of the current news, and I want to sort of be clear-headed if there's a situation in the future where we do see a drop.
Yeah, it's nice to sleep at night, right?
Yeah, well, the way I approach it is, you never want to back yourself into a corner. And so, if I no longer lose sleep at night, even if I'm losing 7 figures, that sort of isn't upsetting me. It's more about you don't want to, in terms of when you're investing, be in that losing trade with no clear sort of parameters to it. And so with all the uncertainty around at the moment and a bit of fatigue in general because of all the terrible stuff, I just don't want to be tuned into news in terms of a financial perspective. Plus the market in general is just crap. So during a crab market, I don't need to have money in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you mentioned you want to watch the World Cup earlier, so it's probably right about to begin. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and I hope to have you again in the future in 2023, and we catch up again and talk about more stuff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any tips on the score tonight, guys? Argentina will win. I think Amal is already in his jersey.
Yeah, no, I actually got caught up in our conversation. I was intending to bet on tonight, or to look at what I'm going to bet for.
Yeah. You
I
can
think
bet live.
Yeah, I think in terms of the money line, you can't ignore Croatia here, because these two teams, they might be 60-40 skewing Argentina, or even 50-50, but the money's not that way. So you'd maybe look at like a draw full time, and then look at Croatia qualify. But yeah, I kind of like a draw bet here, because Croatia's probably going to park the bus.
Both teams can play for the draw. I mean, it's like the only option, especially if you are 1-0 behind, you can score a goal and play for the draw. So it's a highly desirable outcome.
I also like a 0-0 halftime.
Anyway. That's good. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to bet on that. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining here today with us. Tomorrow we have EDG, on Thursday Foodmasku, and Friday Bonafide Han. Thanks, everyone, for coming in. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the game. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone who joined. Have a great day.